Well, okay, let's take the time to do what I call a situational report or a sit rep. That means when the game starts, you press start, and on viewing the map, you orient yourself to a mutually beneficial strategic direction. That is, as always, on spawn, you take a gander at where you think enemy spawn is. If you are correct, my friend, you will get a kill. But if you are incorrect, someone fucking dies. Now remember that in this, creativity is not thrown out the window. An army becomes invincible when there is a variety and variance in our attack vectors. Meaning, by I approaching from the back, you approaching from the front, and Ghost approaching from the east, while Price is approaching from the west, we literally crush down our enemy, effectually removing any options they have at any offensive movement, and quite literally take over the game. As Todd Mobile would put it, domination. Swag mantra? Hmm. What is the most effective way to contribute to the team? So I'll preface this by saying that remember that an army is comprised of what I call two essential movements: an offensive movement and a defensive movement. The offensive movement are essentially for players who are quite aggressive in their approach. They not only enjoy the aspect of being forward movement, forward oriented, essentially always ensuring that they push things forward. While the defensive movement is comprised of cautious players, people like me, people who do not want to die do not want to die so easily, who, as the saying says, do not feel like rushing to their death, so to speak. In this allows for what I call alignment based on the kind of player that you are. If you're offensive or aggressive in nature, then you're most suited for the offensive line, the offensive movement. If you're defensive in nature, then you're more suited for the defensive line. Note that the defensive movement actually does do two things. Not only do they set what I call the back line, which is the backbone of the army, the defensive line that ensures that if anyone were to sneak up on them, they would be checked, right? And then also, if guided by, I guess, a higher level vision oriented commander, they always set their back line in such a way that any assets that have been conquered or taken over are well protected. That way, it ensures that any territory that has been fought for will remain under control. The offensive movement has so well probably sussed is the one that pushes things forward, the one that is continually moving the boundaries of the army at hand, right? Now, I think oftentimes people think that because it's an offensive movement, then it's okay to just accept loss as a price of doing business. As much as that may be a reality, I am not a subscriber of that philosophy. In fact, I actually believe that being offensive minded means that you're way more team oriented than anything else because you realize this ultimate truth that no matter how much I can accomplish on my own, there is so much that can be done when I am with another, when I'm with a team. If you want to put this very objectively, try working for a fast food place for a short amount of time. You will be shocked by how much can be accomplished in how little time, right? This then goes forward to say that It is as if there is a natural ebb and flow to these different factors or factions, right? The defensive line or defensive movement will most likely have a more even keeled and paced on the overall growth of the combat zone, right? This means that it won't just be moving uh, at a. It won't just be moving.
Je n'ai pas compris ta demande.
It won't just be moving at pace with basically enemy down, right? So you kill someone or Tango goes down and then we just move forward. But rather, it will be moving in tandem with how the overall, if you want to call it, war zone or war situation is unfolding. There are times when it won't be moving at all, simply because it's actually beneficial to do so, circa or i.e., the law of growth or the growth rate, right? This is why I believe, in my own opinion, Leonidas actually decided not to push after the Thermopylae victory. Because if you think about it, he could have probably slaughtered a good quarter to a half of the empire just because of the success of that battle. But having seen that the combat zone was not so far-fetched that it was essentially causing for his intervention in a latter part of Greece, the decision to actually stay on foot or stay on ground and not go further than what was necessary proved to be the most effective way of using his military capital, right? Hope this makes sense. Now, conversely, also, the offensive movement tends to be the one that is essentially leading the charge. But remember what I said, that being offensive minded actually means that you have to be a greater team player than anything else. That's why, for example, if you ever find me on the field, I'm always in a defensive location or way in the middle, because by my knowing that I'm actually offensive, I don't like this idea of forcing people to do what I want them to do, even if I know that it's mutually beneficial, even if I know it's actually what they want. Because everyone wants to play their own game, everyone wants to do their own thing. And so rather than doing the whole butting heads alphaness, I'll just let people run into their own walls and just chill in the back and do what I call allow the game to move me forward, if the necessity for that to be the case is there, right? So the point of bringing this up, though, is that the offensive movement tends to move in tandem with the rhythm of the movement of the moment at hand. What that means is sometimes it is actually beneficial to move a bit quicker, because you think you can. The best way I can put this is Tetris, right? You're connecting dots, and all of a sudden it's like ding, 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 combo breaker, ding, 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 ding. Awesome, flawless victory. That's literally how I think about it. And so when that's occurring, the state of, if you want to call it, the multiplier that is found for good things done well is exponentially increased. And so a rhythm or a rate at which movement is occurring on a faster moment to moment basis makes it to where much, 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 much more can be accomplished in a shorter amount of time, right? Now, this hopefully illustrates or illuminates why I believe good people who play well together are the only ways of running offensive operations. Because if they don't, then you won't have this situation of someone actually watching your six. You won't have the situation of someone covering you. Clearly seeing how you're moving out of cover and essentially enacting draw fire, right? You won't have situations where you are up ahead, and because someone sees that you need a cover for a blind spot to essentially take into place and thus maneuver themselves in such a way that they do this before you can move forward and thus keep moving things forward and thereby increasing the chances of your survival, none of that will occur. All would be, you basically won't have people LeBroning off of each other, as I put it so well the other day. All you'll have is me and what do I get out of it. That's what you'll get. And nothing destroys everything else than that toxic ass mindset. And why? I tend to just Tai Chi my fucking way out of it way before it even occurs. Now, in this, it is also important to note how the same facets apply in a business sense. Meaning, for me to essentially effectively know what my customer wants, I have to be in their shoes, right? For me to effectively present it in such a way that they would actually say, hey, that is literally what I'm looking for. I would have to know what they see, what they look for, what they say when they talk about the way that they are going about buying a shoe, right? All of these things are facets that are maybe in different zones, right? Different sectors, lead generation, right? Sales, right? Qualification, qualifying, um, marketing, right? HR, right? Customer service. But if you think about it, they are all one and the same because they're part of one synergistic entity. This is why the sense of ensuring that cross departmental communication, what I call speak freely channels, are tantamount to the success of the entity at hand. By ensuring that anyone can always disseminate and express a message in such a way that a seed, as Robina Corton, can quickly be planted, we ensure that optimum speed of transmission, what the network engineer's challenge of latency is, be addressed and met in a way that it is met, addressed, and answered for at all layers, right? You can think of you can think of it as parallelism in action, right? Doing answering the same problem at all the layers that it's found in a holistic and synergistic way. And why, to me, having a vision is so important. When we are all aligned on the mission at hand, when we're all aligned on the goal, on what has to occur, we know what we on an individual level have to contribute in order to make that a reality. I wrote a book on this called The Surefire Way to Developing a Marketing Campaign, something like that. And my point was that oftentimes, and sad to the detriment of those who are being served, businesses do not have actual alignment between their respective departments. They may have what I call strategic alignments, meaning, yes, you can talk to me, but they do not actually have alignment, meaning the emotional undertone is not there. Put simply, they do not see one another as I would see my friend, as I would see my mom, as I would see someone I truly care for. And by virtue of that, do not essentially enact the actions, words, and thoughts that are factually there when a business is operating in tandem with itself, in tandem with the audience it serves, and in tandem with the world that we live in, right? By that, situations like, um, he demanded a refund, but he felt like if he was craft but God into leaving his money with us, or he felt like the product didn't meet his needs because on some level we were selling something he didn't want, right? He felt as if he was compelled to do business with us, when in reality we brought him no value that was tan- that was tangibly and that was tangibly felt by his organizations, right? Or even the product or service by its current or in its current permutation, packaging, positioning, and what I call conversion medium, right? The way by which dollars for service and products are exchanged was done in such a way that it did not meet the reality of the end customer at hand. All of these different situations may look like different and real, uniquely, if you want to call it, referenceable pain points. But the reality of it is, they could always be solved by this one truth. How holistic are we in actuality? In the same way that the offensive and defensive movement, by understanding how each role serves to the accomplishment of the mission at hand, which means win the war by essentially accruing all the wins and depreciating all the losses, one is most effectively able to make higher level impactful decisions. Because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. The decision to smile, making a joke before handing out their total, or the decision before asking how their day is, before even telling them what you can do for them, or even quite simply, the decision to ask them how they're doing way after you've done business with them matters way more than the actual thing that you are doing for them, the actual service or product that you are disseminating, the actual truth that you are impacting them with, that they will forever be changed by. By having synergy at the forefront of everything that you do, you ensure that you always stay what I call the light ship, the most aerodynamic, fluid entity or permutative version of the entity that is. Furthermore, it's also cool to know that when one does things in the best way that they possibly can on their level, they not only assure the people that they can trust them, but they also, on some level, relieve the burden of all of the effective actions that are currently ongoing. Me, for example, one of my favorite things to do is run what I call the fucking back line, meaning the back channel. If you can, for quick TLDR, think of Snake from Metal Gear Solid, or Cell from Siphon Filter, I believe is the name, right? And caveat, I love those small 9mm looking things. They're like small weapon, but it's like pew, 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 pew. Anyways, the thing that I love to do when playing this game, Call of Duty, is running what I call the back channel. The back channel is essentially found by going counter to mainstream flow. So, put simply, look at your heads up display and the direction that most of the guys are going, go counter to that. What it does is it not only finds a strong absolute north for you, right? The point at which everyone is going, but it also gives you a strong direction as to where to go to find Tango. If you were to ever wonder how to go about dropping behind enemy lines, this would be a surefire starter point. Once I am there, if I get there, it not only radically improves the overall effectiveness of the offensive movement, because the chaos that I essentially begin slicing throats, creating chaos in the offensive camp from behind them, allows that moment, creates that moment of distraction that the offensive movement can take advantage of and start unleashing chaos by crashing through the gates. In my opinion, this is what Leonidas did, right? By choosing Thermopylae as a focal point and using the sheep herders passage has essentially a choke point to narrow, cut down numbers, causing or choosing a strategic location that made it to where the Persians were basically fighting out of it was basically they either killed a Spartan with a thrust or they missed in the thrust and just fell to the fucking waters, right? It was literally like that. And not only did that dramatically assault the level of perception that the Persians had for the Greeks, but it also ensured that whenever they were to essentially find or retreat back to a stable ground, they were already at a, if you want to call it, calibrating disadvantage, because the turning to and meeting the front frontal assault from the other Greek forces caused that moment, those small micro moments of imbalance that could quickly be exploited and taken advantage of, right? In that same way, when one is better equipped to know what they must do in order to make the vision of the organization a reality, I was asked for the end lifestyle outcome, the end desired goal, then one is most able to effectively illuminati outcomes, situations, moments that can be beneficially conducive to making that occur at a more rapid pace. This, my friends, is why we must talk. Anyways, this was quite a lot. Hope you guys get something out of this. And as always, swag the fuck out. Steven here today. And today another great fucking wonderful swag hack that you can employ if you're essentially an employee somewhere is to do what I call setting an intention for yourself, i.e. swag mantra. What the fuck is this shit I'm talking about? The purpose of setting a mantra isn't so you can look cool, you can flash in front of your friends, or you can seem important, but it's quite literally to maintain detachment and altitude as time unravels. We all know stress shifts can be quite fucking annoying, clients can be quite burdensome, and quite literally it can be so much to do in one day or in one unit at a time. And with all this stress, we tend to essentially get bogged down in the minutiae of things, as opposed to remaining that personal excellence part of ourselves, essentially ensuring that whatever we do is not only optimized to the best of our abilities, but also streamlined to essentially contribute to the total achievement of all goals. How do you do this? Basically, set a mantra for yourself. Something, an idea, a symbol, a motif that you can essentially bring your mind to whenever these difficult moments that will come up, in order to essentially preserve balance, equanimity, empathy, and total care in what you're doing. Furthering the passion that it is whatever brought you to that moment, whatever brought you to that particular task at work, and thereby finding fulfillment in what you're doing. This allows you to essentially always be the best of you and to always look forward. Two things that are critical to one's ability to detach from the moment. That is, not be so identified with what you're doing, but rather with the pleasure of being able to do the work itself. If you've always wondered, as a leader, how to keep people, your squadron, in unison, this, my friends, is it. Swag mantra. Hope you guys got something out of this, and as always, swag the fuck out. Yes, it is not only enough to call someone handing you capital a sir or a miss, madam, out verbally, but the game changer lies in holding that same endearment of respect inside of your head. Walking around being like, oh, he's a piece of shit, or I'm better than him. I'm better than her. I make more money than him. I make more money than her. Will quite literally result in you not treating them like a sir or a miss or madam, but holding that same attitude that you have in your words, in your thoughts, creates an alignment within you that will quite literally resonate the tone, melody, frequency of empathy, aka may you also experience happiness, or may I seek to experience life the same way that you do. Hope this fucking makes sense. And if it doesn't, remember the golden rule. May I be treated as I treat you. Hey. It's been coming up quite often recently, so I figured I may as well just jot this down in video form. So one of the really interesting things, I guess, of being a business owner is reading the ad postings and listings for particular projects and gigs. Why do I say that? Is because specifically when it comes to like the developer type of ad listings, software, coding, application development, web application, there seems to be kind of a general minutia of confusion as to what the person is actually suffering with, right? Which leads to my biggest point. One of the things that I really strive to do before getting down to like any form of development or even design is sit down and actively identify what I call the root problem domain, right? For my snipers, this is basically once you got your lens, your scope set, essentially lasering in your target. Now, the reason for doing this is threefold. One, it aligns you to what's currently going on, right? Meaning, if you have already launched or deployed a solution that is tackling a particular root problem, pain, then by aligning yourself to how it's doing at answering that challenge is detrimental going forward to make a better solution, right? Number two, it aligns you to actually what the fuck is up. Meaning, oftentimes, I think because of, as I put it, the myriad and spectrums of possibilities when it comes to technologies, methodologies, frameworks, tools, languages. I mean, there's probably 1,001 spaghetti variants for JavaScript at this point, and it's only rising, right? Because there is such a vast space when it comes to the, if you want to call it, the vector set pertaining, or the set of elements pertaining to the choices you have available as a developer to create a solution. We are so excited to focus on the technology, which brings me down to the third point. The most important thing, remember, at the end of the day, is to actually know what we're facing. And step 3, doodling the root problem domain. As an English as a second language speaker, one of the biggest, insights, both in my personal and private life, has been, personal and public life, has been just seeing the impact of communication, specifically language, right? I kind of had hints to this in, I think it's Swag Income, Swag Phonetics, right? Something like that video, where I was essentially bringing up the concept of how even the way something sounds and the subjective realities attached to that may literally wind up causing a literal loss in translation phenomenon that is occurring when playing the telephone game, when communicating with other people. Meaning, you may have a slang way of using a word, and another person from another region may have a radically way of using that word. And so when we come together in a professional sense, in a business sense, I think it's best to align both our definitions on the same page, so that going forward, when I mention a word and essentially I'm referring to a particular subjective reality, there is a 99.999% chance, if not there's a 100% chance that you know exactly what I'm referring to, meaning nothing is left to assumption. Personally, I've found that this is quickly achieved by actually going beyond the words or the world of words and actually just going toward the words of symbols, of drawings, of a picture in 1,000 words or 1,000 forms, if you will. By doing that, you're removing all of the translation errors that are due to the different respective subjective realities that we bring into our business spheres, and you're speaking from a concretely objective reality. This not only guarantees that communication goes up by 33% across the board, both in terms of scoping the same target, having the same vision of what is to come as far as end life outcome, but also furthermore aligning oneself when unlocking the particular capabilities and skill sets that are necessary to achieve the goal at hand. By doing this, you literally make Slack even cooler to use, because now we're not just minutiaing back and forth like bruh, you were saying this, I didn't mean that, but it's actually Roger every single time, moving the goalpost forward until the fucking goal is scored. It's all about the doodle, guys. Be like a child, as Jesus would say. Anyways, hope you guys got something out of it. And as always, swag the fuck out. In the same way that you wouldn't leave the two respective beautiful ladies hanging that are requiring your assistance to be the ice-breaking entity when trying to merge two worlds in the goals of attempting or actually having a threesome, you wouldn't leave your clients, your audience, and the talent at hand empty-handed or hanging as well when trying to best effectively assess if they can be of most particular use and service to you. Please draw the picture, i.e., I walk into my house, I go to the bathroom, and upon attempting to open the bathroom, the door falls off. And this scenario occurs again and again, i.e., it is a real and tangible pain point. I need assistance. Help? Response, oh, possible solutions. Here is a doorman who could essentially fix the hinges of your door. Here is a doorman who could essentially provide a new door for you. And here is a doorman who may be the broker that can do both, all of the above, or something entirely different. Maybe you could change the entire pathway upon which the door lies, and that was the issue that spurred the mold, that created the fissures on the hinges that cause it to come off. You see that? Help us by really seeing you. That way we can really connect the dots for what we can do for you, how we can impact your world, and how we can leave you better than we found you. Another powerful concept is the idea of presence, right? So oftentimes people ask, how can I be more present to the moment? More specifically, how can I leverage that or convey that to my clients, customers, and the people I'm working with in order to bring more value to the table and overall become more valuable to them? Well, I ask you, how often do you look them deeply in the eye? And you say, huh? Well, I just got this little kitten. And one of the things that I'm really drilling into her, especially since she's at that age where she's really jumping onto everything, sharpening her nails, claws, teeth, and overall effective power, is to actually just take the time to be still. By doing that, you're essentially inviting awareness into everything that you do. In the same way that a ranger or Guild Wars read the wind, expounds a philosophy or a concept of assessing everything that's occurring before making one's decision, one should actually strive to make this an active discipline, a process, a habit that they do in every single thing that they are involved in, because it literally, quite effectively, 10x's everything. Wisdom being the application of one's ethos, logos, and pathos, along with their entire capabilities and overall effective conscious awareness, to the active application of leveraging past events in order to render one decision, is only then coming into play when one is already coming from a balanced state of mind from the get-go. Meaning, you cannot do something wise if you yourself are chaotic at heart. In order to do that, or in order to essentially change or invite this essence or the state of harmony, balance must be called as an active, meditative almost practice. Simply looking someone directly in the eye. Hello there. How's it going? I am here in this moment with you. Before moving their hand to draw their weapon, before shunning them using body language, before getting into the quick draw McGraw defensive mode of response that they may have perfectly drilled into them makes every single one of their interaction that much more meaningful, not only to them, but to the person that they're carrying. Because I guarantee you, that fucking mantra, before you utter a word, your energy is felt, travels across all the realms of communication, and enters or is most first experienced vividly from the conscious presence of one's gaze. Even if I am high as fuck, stoned out of my mind, my gaze, my looking at someone directly into their eyes, my connecting into someone's very soul will allow me to essentially break all the barriers of communications, all the modicums or places of error brought about by my state of intoxication, causing fluidity where fluidity could not be, and thus thereby grant me the channel of communication, a mode of perception, and even a mannerism that will allow me to most effectively express what must be expressed in the moment at hand without infringing, or causing any undue resistance. That, my friend, is a game-changing element to making one's relationships, and overall meaning, fulfillment, place in the world, unique method of going about their day-to-day that much more dramatically potent. Check it out. Let me know how it goes. And I hope this helped. Swag. Fuck out. Just like a quick fucking dash off, one of the things that I found to be extremely useful in this game mode, meaning Battle Royale, is to actually continuously update your heads up display, which is essentially if you click at the top right and you see the white dash line, every single time that you get a notice saying the safe zone is retracting, make sure that you essentially upload your ticker to the center of the new safe zone. Why? So in my experience, I've actually found that by doing this, I actually essentially chart a path for myself that is essentially encountering the least amount of engagement. Why is this important? Well, you have to think, the primary mission objective of this game mode is to fucking survive, to be the last man standing. It's not to get as much kills as possible or essentially encounter as many engagements as possible. Rather, it's actually to practice being a fucking ninja and just being there at the end. It's kind of like pulling a girl home, if you think about it. You just want to essentially maintain a relationship or a flow or channel of communication that is speak freely at ease enough to where at the end or whenever the conditions that are able to arise where the condition or the experience that we will come to know as your happiness bloom or manifest has the thought in our head saying, I kind of want to have sex with this guy and take him home with me and be okay with that. You will be there, ready, and essentially able to fucking deliver on that. In the same way, if you think about it, every single time that you essentially land or get into a gunfight, you're decreasing your chances of being ready to finish the final opponent that you will have to face in the final rounds of Battle Royale. This is why a strategy that essentially strives to maintain anonymity, essentially avoiding gunfight or warfare unless absolutely necessary, is vital to one's success. This is how I've literally managed to rise to the Grandmaster and Legendary roles consistently in all the fucking seasons that have passed up until now. It's something that I highly recommend you guys try out for yourself, and I guarantee you that you will love the results of being there at the top of the hill, staying like a motherfucking boss. Hope you guys got something out of this, and as always, swag the fuck out. What up, party people? The word of the day is aimer, which means to love. J'aime. Tu aimes. Il ou elle aime. Nous aimons. Vous aimez. Il ou elle aime. Hey. Damn, I ain't even hitting like it used to. I'm already full, boys. What do I do? Send help. Say hello to my little friend, Lyra. Like a lyre. Instruments from the gods. I believe she's the reincarnation of my cat, Leo. Like, literally spitting image. If y'all are Facebook friends with me, peep the image I shared with y'all recently. You'll see what I'm talking about. Such a cutie. Yo, do what I call taking a sit rep, which is called a situational report. This is done by pressing the start button, viewing the map, and pointing yourself or orienting yourself to a mutually beneficial strategic direction. TLDR on spawn. Press the start button and take a gander at where you think enemy spawn is. If you're correct, you will get a kill. And if you're incorrect, someone fucking dies. Now, remember that this doesn't mean that creativity goes out the window. An army becomes invincible when there's a variety and variance in attack vectors, meaning by I approaching from the back, you approaching from the front, Ghost approaching from the west, and Price approaching from the east, we literally cut down the options for the enemy to launch a counter maneuverment strike force and effectively take over the game, i.e., domination. Swag mantra: presence. What the fuck does it really mean to be present to the moment in a context where my teammate's blind spot is constantly changing? Over and out. Now, to kind of not leave you hanging and maybe give you direction as to how to go about answering that question, let me quickly bring up some ideas that I've kind of been suggesting recently. So I like to say that an army is essentially comprised of a defensive movement and an offensive movement. So what that means is the offensive movement. Let's make two quick definitions. Basically, on spawn, if you just tap forward, that means you just run forward into whichever direction you spawn into, using the left joystick. So you press forward on your joystick, you run forward. Let's define that as looking forwards, right? And let's define looking backwards as on spawn, turning 180 degrees from the direction in which you were spawned in and then running forward. So that's running backwards. You just look backwards, and then you basically turn around, and then you run in that direction, right? I like to say that an army is comprised of two movements. One movement is looking forward, meaning it's running forward, and another one is looking backwards, meaning it's essentially doing the 180 degrees of it. So a good mantra or a good way of representing this is if you have a globe, you and your friend you turn around kind of like Army of Two style, remember the game? So you're back to back to each other, and you just run in that direction, right? Basically, the gist is that if you are on pace with one another, you will meet at the 180th degree position from where you currently are in the globe, right? So now the point being that what essentially sets apart the defensive movement from the offensive movement? Well, I like to say that just kind of like in 300, where the whole idea of a phalanx is essentially ensuring that as you move, your movement is not only balanced so that you can most effectively cut down enemy movement coming at you, but also it's balanced for the sake of your teammate so that you do not leave the overall squadron that is the group of guys that you are fighting with, the group of comrades that are fighting with you, defenseless to enemy attack. So this literally gives responsibility to each squad member to hold it fucking down for the sector, the angle, and the coverage zone that they find themselves in. Because by them dying, they effectively create a hole through which the enemy can exploit and take advantage of and essentially mount an attack that could literally bring us down. But to bring it back to this whole offensive and defensive, I realized a long time ago that because of our temperament, our attitudes, our way of living, we actually end up bringing that into the way that we go about gaming. So some of us are actually more aggressive, right? Or I like to use the word, they like to run like Broly from Dragon Ball Z, meaning you're all about the rage and just running into a gunfire, not really giving a fuck about the tactical meanderings of it all, right? Other people, maybe like me, have come to see the value in actually seeing this shit has another way of sharpening one's mind and treating it as a mind training exercise. And essentially, thus, then attempting to see this as a self development vehicle. And then being more reserved, conservative, cautious, as if it was reality itself, right? I mean, in other words, dying 2 seconds into the war is a loss for the army, right? Not just for the guy who dies, but for the whole army itself. So the mission is to not fucking die. I mean, there's a reason why the people who came back from the Vietnam War are regarded as like fucking legends because the shit that they had to go through, God. Anyways, napalm coming down from the sky. Need I say more? Anyways, to translate this back into like game speak, realize that if you are more prone to a conservative and a cautious style of play, then you're more suited to actually build what I call the defensive backbone of the army, of the team. And this is essentially looking forwards. So you'll find me along that line. You'll find a good sniper along that line because if you think of the traditional sense of the sniper, it was meant to essentially check enemy fire before it even got to the gates, right? So if you could build your nest way up on a fort and essentially have a weapon that had reach, you could stop and essentially discourage, I like that word, people from sneaking up on you and make it to where the act of even thinking about it would become a crippling morale thing to do, because you would just see heads coming off and pew, 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 every single time you tried, right? And then conversely, or on the other side as well, if you like to just, as I say, run and gun, or you're all about the action, then you should also think about joining the front line, right? Which is looking forwards. Now, the point that I want to mention in all of this is that it's interesting to note that oftentimes when we are losing, it's actually because we have not set a proper back line, right? So let me kind of elaborate on that. So I'm a soccer player, and one thing I've noted is that oftentimes people think that the idea of a offside trap is something that can only be experienced in like official games. But I've actually realized, and I have data to back this up, by nature of the game itself, I use the word swag or sacred geometry a lot. The nature of the square, right, that houses the entire field, the players, etc., allows for, if you want to call it, a certain bounding of, you can call it movements, tactical options, and possibilities, to where essentially by us having to only rely on 10 players or 11 players to score a goal, there can only be a set of, you can call it subsequent trees if you're a computer engineer, to come about from that, right? And I've seen that in this, those that maintain a solid back line, that always ensure that the last four men before the goalkeeper act in unison, to where they never allow for a break in the link, a break in the chain, a hole to form in the phalanx, as previously mentioned. And if they hold to that, to the 90th minute, they normally cause for room up front to be created by the midfielders and the strikers, and thus essentially allow for a bountiful creation of possibilities, just in terms of, if you want to call it tiki-takas, hold possession games, to even tactical strategic counter-offensive maneuvers, to even just your simple run and guns, right? You see Messi taking it all on himself. That's just literally what happens when you use your space well. But furthermore, also, what was most intriguingly interesting was also how it created for what I call uh, pure domination of the game itself. Meaning, it's as if by the back line, whenever they moved in unison to move the line further up or further down, the game could not progress beyond their decision of that bounded line or delimiter, right? And it goes back to that concept of, for example, in World War One or two, when you didn't have a radar or you didn't know where everyone was, what you would do is just build trenches, right? Right up to where you think the enemy was. And the trenches served two purposes. One, clearly to ensure that you could quickly and effectively launch an assault if orders came down the line for it. But also, it also allowed for protection of gained assets, resources, capital, strategic locations to be more easily and effectively guarded, and essentially prevent the case of it being lost again to enemy forces where it being gained, right? So say you just spent 3, 4, 5 days on a skirmish fighting for this fort. You then build a trench, essentially setting a back line that ensures that it is within the lines or the region of that back. So you say, you draw. Let's say the square represents the location at hand. Then you would draw a trench to the left of it, right? Let's just make that simple, and the left being to the left of the asset in question, and then the line going up and down, and then that would essentially ensure that the asset is in fact within your territory. So What that meant was, as war progressed, you had a strategic protocol that ensured that whatever you fought for, you actually maintained control over, right? So how did this translate within game mechanics or game speak? Like this game, for example? Well, the defensive movement not only prevents people from sneaking up on us, but it also sets the pace for the guys up front when it comes to like them getting rushed, right? You ever had situations where, for example, dudes are just feeling overwhelmed on like so many directions? Like you just you spawn and you die, you spawn and you die, you spawn and you die, right? Or for example, it seems as if two or three people who have like they know that really sweet spot in the map are just there in time, rush there, and because they're so well mounted and so well ingrained in that position, there's nothing that can be done, right? By essentially having a movement that's actually whose goal is to, like an assassin, try to drop in behind enemy lines and slice their throats. You're essentially creating the possibility to not only catch the enemy off guard, but to make it to where the offensive movement, who's meeting them head front, kind of like Leonidas at Thermopylae, to essentially have a higher chance of actually crushing through the gates. This was a lot to kind of process, but just simply remember, if you're an offensive player, think about going up front, so looking forwards. If you're a defensive player, think about looking backwards or building the back line. And if you don't know or you are unsure of what kind of player you really are, I would actually highly recommend and invite you to build the back line, because oftentimes the cause for defeat lies in the improper buildup of that back line. Literally, most of the time, there's no one there. Everyone just thinks, oh, I'm going to just revenge kill the person who killed me, not essentially inviting presence and being present to the moment, as a fucking Eckhart Tolle bro would say, thereby not actually reading the game and thinking that, oh, it's just another mindless grind to level 60. I guarantee you, when you play or read things from this level, things really get fucking interesting. Because now you're not thinking of, ha, another one. You're just like, what's fucking possible? Anyways, hope you guys got something out of this, and as always, swag the fuck out.
Flash of flames, wanna know how I got.
Yo, so real quick, the one thing, there are a few maps I fucking love, like love. And one of them is this one, because I have really found personally that it's one of the best places to practice what I call the art of ghosting, right? Basically, ninjutsu, ninja art, the art of hiding in plain sight. So I've mentioned this in the past before, but I guess this is really for people who love marksmanship. There is this weird thing that I just call uh, ocular fuzziness that occurs around essentially the 45th to 50th degree, right? So draw your typical radian circle, or and essentially where 0 is at the right, and essentially you go in counterclockwise fashion. At around the 45th to 50th degree, if you essentially draw a line from that angle, 135 meter out, what happens is it's kind of like, I like to describe it like your phone's camera, right? Basically, think of your phone and the app. Wait, 1 second. So think of your phone's your camera, right? Anytime you essentially tap on the screen, what happens is there's a software in there that changes what I call the configuration profile for your camera. And this configuration profile essentially affects values like aperture, isolation, which is, or let's put it even simpler, lightness. How much light it's actually allowing to go through, right? Another one is the darkness and lightness values, right? Just the shades of black and white and the detail of that your phone is essentially able to use, right? So if you think of a range, right, from let's say 0 to 32, right, or 0 to 64, or 0 to 256, how much space on the hardware itself is allotted to essentially establish or set the values pertaining to particular or unique shades of blackness and whiteness, right? Does the same thing for colors, right? So think of red, green, and blue and hues. My web designers, web developers will really fucking resonate with this because, especially if you're like in like avid Photoshop, Lightroom user, you'll realize variants, saturations can literally make everything seem radically different. From something that looks like a 1918 picture to literally the most vibrant Avatar movie production-esque quality, right? Resolution. And so what I say is you want to think of an eye, right? And what happens is as you essentially increase or open your eye higher, like think of like a really big eye, so like a newborn baby, basically. You're essentially adding or allowing more light to come into your retina, right? And converse effect if you squint your eyes, kind of like an Asian, right? You're not allowing much eye or lightness, right? And so that essentially is the configuration profile for a camera. And so what happens is every time you click on a particular part of the screen, you're essentially saying, hey, camera, use this spot as the model to define the values for your configuration profile. What does it mean by model? It says this spot is the golden mean for this scene, meaning use this to essentially come up with a blueprint for the ideal values for the elements I just mentioned, right? And so that's why it does that little cuckoo, or it feels like it's doing this recalibrating thing, and then it refocuses, and based on whether or not you picked a good spot, it sharpens, adds more detail to the picture, etc., right? In the same way, the human eye has this effect where at the 45th to the 50th angle, exactly, we have what's called this like ocular fuzziness. And so what happens is things that are beyond the 135 meters actually, even though they're still there, they do not get processed at such an intense level of depth, right? It's kind of like the camera doesn't focus with a level of sharpness that is has defined, has the most closest or closest to me objects and elements in the picture. So another way of putting this is another reason why slants and screens in football are so fucking deadly in work. Because essentially what happens is the YZ receivers essentially act or are in positions in the field where the visual or the ocular fuzziness is in play for most safeties and corners and even linebackers, causing them to actually hide in plain sight, literally disappear, right? If you go to marksmanship school or even sniper school, my guess is that's literally the very first thing they work on. First, you build your ghillie suit, right? So you can get a sense for what darkness or blackness values are, right? And then the second thing they have you do is just stare at the fucking sun. So you can actually get an intuitive understanding of what happens when glint comes into play. Basically, when light reflects off of people's scopes. And so now, as you're scanning the environment, you're actually able to detect when people are looking through their lenses, so to speak, because you'll be able to detect light reflecting off of people's lenses. Now, to essentially solve, or I guess help you better essentially combat this phenomenon, my advice is to do what I call fucking crouch. It's literally, it goes back to that, the bare bones essentials that you kind of pick up on if you play the storyline of this game. For me personally, I found that by pressing circle and just walking around crouch literally removes this phenomenon, because you start taking the game at a Neo level pace, allowing you to actually cause your mind to essentially process more than it usually would, thereby allowing you to even detect things before they occur, i.e., spotting places where someone would be hiding, checking for nooks and crannies, and all the other cool things that literally make you a fucking ghost. Anyways, that was quite a lot of information. I was like a straight, a right hook, and an uppercut. Anyways, hope you guys got something out of this, and as always, swag the fuck out. Also, just remember that I'm not here to tell y'all what to do, like, at all. I think more than anything else, I think it's badass that we finally have Mike and Comms on here, and these are just ideas that I've come across, like in my life and my gameplay, and I thought it'd be fucking dope if we could create like a free marketplace exchange of ideas, where we can just exchange ideas and shit we've come up with, and essentially build a sick ass hub of like reference experiences that way. But yeah, it's whatever. Take it as you want, my guys and girls. Cheers. What up? So you gonna let me hit it or what?